Yo, what's up guys, and welcome to a brand new video over on SoRare. So in today's episode, what we're going to do is going to wrap up the limited and underdog investments for the week. And I guess I'll also go and show you guys what I've brought so far and planning of buying. As always, if you guys are interested in signing up to SoRare, there is a referral link down below. Once winning 5 cards on the bidding market, you will get yourself a free tradable limited card. Now don't overpay to get this free limited card because it's only worth about £2 or £7. Just pick up the deals as you go. On top of that, you do have to be 18 to play SoRare because it is real life money and that money can be lost as well as it can be made. And finally, if you guys are interested in watching me do the scouting or investing live on the stream, I stream over on my Twitch from 7 PM every single day. So some of you may not be familiar with the Underdog tournament. The Underdog tournament is basically the cheapest tournament SoRare offers, and as a result there is very high demand. Now the weekend requirements of the Underdog tournament is you need to put in 5 players with an L15 under 40. And likewise for the limited specialist, you also need to put in 2 players with an L15 under 40. This means that there is a total demand of 6 players every weekend that need to have an L15 under 40. And as a result, there's very high demand for these players, and these players go up. So, how do we go and find these players that are going to be well demanded? Well, if I was going to say, here you go, you can have 300 quid, go and pick some players. How would you pick players that are performing well but have an L15 under 40? Well, behold SoRare Data's filter. So basically what we're going to do is we are going to go and put in, first off, game week 262. That's going to make sure we're looking at players from this weekend. The decisives and all-rounds I don't really care about personally. So what we do is we maximise both of them for the overall 5 and 15. And then as I said, you can't have an L15 over 40, so what you do, believe it or not, is you put L15 maximum 40. Crazy. And then what you want to do is you want to have the highest L5 possible. Obviously, if you've got a high L5, then you're playing well, but you weren't about 2 months ago, and as a result, it just means you're on form. So then go and untick these, and what we get, behold, is 13 players. Well, to add to this, one of these has no limited cards, another one has no limited cards, and one of them is £108. Leaves us with a pool of 10 players, which have a SO5 over 50, but the an L5 over 50 and an L15 under 40. Now, this is a fair bit less than last week. Last week, I'm pretty sure we had a pool of about 15 to 21, so almost double the amount of players. Well, what I was also looking at, which was quite interesting, is only 2 of these are forwards. You got Tasaku Anso and Julian Kresna. Now, this is normal because you're going to get less forwards popping up here because obviously forwards, as they get a goal, and a lot of their score is dependent on decisives, you know, they're going to be quite hard to pop up. So we've got 2 forwards popping up. We've got 6 defenders, which therefore goes and leaves us with 2 midfielders. So you can see that it is quite skewed in the way of defenders. And as a result, what this led for previous weeks is defenders didn't actually do it as well, because obviously if there's high supply, but only as equal demand for defenders as there is midfielders and forwards, you know, they aren't as demanded. So what I'd imagine this week is that the midfielders and the forwards would rise more than defenders, like we've seen in previous weeks, unless the defenders have exceptional scores. And the reason I think there could be decent demand is he's got a really, really nice flat L5. Now this can be more demanded than a skew L5, for example. Let's say they had a 20 score, then they hit a 70 score, then they hit a 20 score, then a 70 score. Just because this can confirm, I guess, consistency. The problem with this guy is he's 20 quid, and if we go and compare him, you've got players like Pytrov, who I'd argue have the exact same score set in terms of very, very flat player with a better L5, but he's a lot cheaper. But yeah, you got obviously Booty right here. Again, a very flat player. I'll be honest with you, probably not one of the players I'll probably put too much in, just because again, there are very, very similar players at a fraction of the cost. So now getting away with Anso, and Anso is quite interesting because, as I said, there are basically 2 forwards that I'd want to use, and this is one of the forwards. The problem with this guy is, I mean, it's the problem with all the strikers, obviously they're a bit all over the shop. He also has been a sub, but not as of recently. As of recently, he started a fair bit. So obviously you're getting 2 contribution against Hoffenheim. No contribution, but still not the worst all-round for a striker. Yeah, I do actually plan on picking up a fair few of him. Also, on top of that, there actually isn't much demand for people buying him at the moment, so it should be quite easy to go and pick up a few of him. But yeah, you got Tokimusu And so I've looked at some of the forwards in the past. We've actually seen forwards with scores as low as like 47 to 49 do pretty well. So the 56 is pretty decent. What does work out of his favour is the one time he played well was in his last game. If he played really well in his last game, there'd be a lot more demand because people would see he's even fresher on form than he is, as if, if he wasn't going to go a 40 last. So basically, if these two were switched, I'd imagine there'd be a lot more demand for him. But as I said, there's only 2 strikers that are overly favourable for the underdogs in limited. So I will pick up a fair few of this guy. And now we get underway with the guys talking about Sergei Paitov. I'll be honest with you, I do think there'll be a fair bit of demand. And the reason I say there'll be a fair bit of demand is because there was a fair bit of demand last week. And he's actually only gone and I think he's improved his score this week. There's also less defenders this week. And again, he's got a really, really nice flat score. You could if you had to buy him, you can't guarantee it obviously, but you'd be expecting a 54. He's hit 3 54s in the last 5 and then obviously an exceptionally high and exceptionally low. These are coming from all arounds. I mean, are they keeping clean sheets? Not even all of them. I mean, only 2 out of the 5 are coming from clean sheets as well. So, yeah, he's a very, very well performing player. I mean, he's literally £5. He's what the whole, I guess, tournament's all about. Cheap players, underdog. I mean, he won't be eligible for next week, so this will be the last week he'll be eligible because obviously he'll remove one of his DMPs next week. And that means he has to get a score below 40, which obviously will heavily crucify his L5. But yeah, a player that I do think could be quite a nice one this week. Obviously, the main problem is that there are 6 defenders that are eligible. But again, there were even more last week, and he had really, really good demand. I can already tell there's good demand from this week, conveniently after I buy one. What I do see a lot of, I mean, that's another viewer, is I'll go and buy a player. Is what's, I guess, becoming increasingly harder, and actually may have to lead to me stopping the Road to Glory and kind of changing my style of content, is as soon as I buy one card, I'm obviously just all my viewers look who I buy and they go and buy it themselves. Obviously, this means I can't go and mass buy cards. Like in previous episodes, I bought 10, 15 players. Here, I'll buy one card, and almost every single time I'll have 3 or 4 cards bought after it, all by viewers. And it's, I say, there's nothing. I choose to do the content creation route, but when it comes to trying to make a trading and investing progressive Road to Glory, it makes it impossible to mass buy cards, and it may just basically mean I have to just move my content into more informative videos rather than demonstrating, I guess, a Road to Glory. The problem with this, guys, is 22 quid, and as I say, we've got a lot of defenders in this week, and he just seems a bit overly expensive. Again, I'll be honest, his recent scores are really, really nice, 48, 52, 64, and 59, and obviously he's coming out of that score right there, so that's not too bad. It's more just that you got to probably pay about 25 quid for, again, a player that's worse than others, and it's in probably the more saturated position this week. So then get to the player that I plan to go in very heavily on, just because he has one of the best L5s out of every single position. But again, I kind of got to, what I said a second ago, is I went and bought the card, and then I have, this viewer buy the card, this viewer go and buy the card, this viewer go and buy the card, that viewer go and buy the card, this viewer go and buy the card, and what it does is, as soon as I buy them, the prices just bang, because I'll have loads of viewers buy a card, and it really, I think I had like 60 trade offers, but as soon as I bought one, his price rose by like 3 quid. So all those trade offers therefore look really bad for the people I send them to. But yeah, Bauer, again, is a player I don't know, he's kind of got to drop a bit now for me to want to go more heavily in him. I've got 2 of him at the moment, but yeah, obviously, really, really nice scores. Again, super, super flat as well. You can see right here, quite progressive even, 260s, 55, 45. He's looking pretty decent. I don't think he'll be able to last. No, I think this might be, unless he removes one of these scores, this will be the last week he'll be eligible. So we get to another one of the strikers, and I've already picked up one of him. Picked him up for a pretty decent deal, actually. Got him for £18.50. But yep, as I say, just 1 or 2 strikers, so I will plan on picking up a few of him. Also, if I'm not wrong, I think he had a decent rise last week. The only problem with the MLS is there's a chance that this week we do get a remint of the MLS, but I think that'll probably be after deadline anyway, so he should be all good. His rise this week would have been whatever he did going into the 8th, so the 8th is here. So he actually would have rose from about £13 to £16, so only a £3 rise last week, but he's pulled in a much higher score this week, so yeah, it should be some decent demand for him. Again, only 2 players. I'd say he's probably got a more favourable score, because like I was saying, if you're coming off of coming off hot off of the last game, I mean, he's playing against Sounders, I'm not too sure how good Sounders are, but yeah, so he's coming off hot off the last game, so I do plan on hopefully picking up a few of him. Then get to Diarra, again another player I plan on picking up a few of, just because there's only 2 midfielders in this week. He's got some really nice all-round scores, obviously he's coming in at a 50. His L15 is actually 37, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He actually might not be the worst investment for next week. Yep, as I Diarra, one of 2 midfielders, so I do think he could do pretty well. In terms of the demand for previous weeks, actually hasn't been much demand. Obviously, this was off the back of him playing a good game rather than that actually being demand for the card. What would we be looking at the first? Well, he would have risen for the 8th, but I'll be honest with you, he actually dropped. So he didn't rise last week, which is a little bit worrying, as his score would have been quite similar last week. But, yep, again, just a player I plan on picking up a few of still. We then move to another Russian League defender, and he's actually got scores very similar. This guy is about £23, but he is coming off of a very hot all around. On top of that, this guy is a defender for Dynamo Moscow, who are one of the best teams in the Russian league. So the clean sheet bonus you should, I'm just looking at it right now, should rely on. I mean, who do they play against? This team. Yeah, and the next game he plays against are like mid-table, and I think they're like 3rd in the league at the moment, so he should be favourable for a clean sheet. But yeah, I can see there being pretty decent demand. The only problem again, 6 defenders this week. And there are players with better scores who are cheaper. And another card I plan to go in pretty heavy in. And guess what? We buy a card. Viewer buys a card. Viewer buys a card. Therefore rising the price. Therefore making it a lot harder for me to win on lower prices. But hey ho, here we go. But yeah, should do really well. 1 or 2 midfielders. A 56 L5. One of the best performing players all week in a position where there's only 2 of. I showed you the other guy. The other guy is pretty decent, but yeah, I do think this guy's pretty good. Now, the problem with this guy is he's only got a supply of 123, which means if there is high demand for him, he could absolutely bang, which is one of the reasons why I sent over mass trade offers. I think I sent over like 600 quid's worth of trade offers into him. Yeah, I'd say really good scores. Bear in mind there were 10 players in total, 2 midfielders in total, only 123 cards of him. As long as he's got demand, potentially could do really well. Just due to low supply, high demand, and one of the best performers of the week. So then finally get to Duarte. Now Duarte's a player that we bought before he played because we knew that he could get a score of 40 and still pull in a 52. And believe it or not, he got a score of 40 and he pulled in a score of 52. But yeah, so we only picked up already, I think we've got 5 of him. We picked up for about 7 quid. He's actually quite cheap at the moment, and the reason I think he's quite cheap is, again, there are a lot of defenders, and he's coming off of not the most favourable score in the world. Coming off of a 40. 40 is not bad, but obviously he's kind of been carried by the 75.2 rather than getting consistent 50-60s. So that's one of the reasons I don't really plan on buying any more of him, I'll be completely honest with you. Just because I think there are a lot of defenders, and I don't mind having 5, but I don't plan on going any deeper into him. But that is going to go and wrap it up as it comes. As I do apologise, I've been moaning throughout the episode. I guess it's more just, I'll tell you in advance that I may have to completely change up the style of content, more just so it's informative rather than, otherwise I'll have to show you the investments post me investing in them. To allow me to make daily content, I think it's a lot better if I just go and make the content the day after, and maybe I just don't invest myself, or don't really rely on investing myself to make other content.